Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be playing Fire Emblem 6 Chapter 24, which for those of you that know is the final chapter of Fire Emblem 6. So for anyone who's been watching my channel very recently and has been watching the uploads, this is probably pretty wacky considering the series that we've been doing is Iron Manning every single Fire Emblem game, and we're only on Fire Emblem 4. So it's pretty weird to do the end game of Fire Emblem 6. But for those of you that have been watching my channel for a long time, you know that we were periodically uploading a hard mode chapter guide for Fire Emblem 6. And the thing is, I completely forgot, but I never finished that. I just had somebody comment on the most recent video in that series, which was chapter 23, like, where's the final part? Where's the final chapter? Which I just simply never made. Part of it is that the end game of Fire Emblem 6, specifically chapter 24, and technically there's like an epilogue chapter, is just pretty boring. This video will probably be pretty short because there's not much to talk about here. But yeah, I don't know why I never finished it. We went through all the work of doing every single chapter, even the route splits, and then I just never finished it. So here I am today. We're gonna finish it. I'm gonna talk about this final chapter. Again, technically 2 chapters. As far as the series we were doing on the channel, the Fire Emblem 4 stuff, the Iron Man stuff, that'll keep going. But I do want to finish this series and maybe move on to another game where we can do some chapter guides, because I did have fun making this. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. So this is chapter 24. Just to refresh anybody who doesn't remember, this is again the very end game of Fire Emblem 6. So this chapter is extremely straightforward. Basically what we're going to be doing is going from room to room with these Manicheets. So here's a room, and every time you seize one of these thrones, a new room is going to open up. And in every single room there's exactly this. There's a Manicheet. Sorry, my buttons are different than they are on the other games. There's a Manicheet on the throne, and then there's 2 Manicheets sitting beside the Manicheet on the throne. And I think they're slightly weaker. I think they're a little bit lower level, yeah. And that's going to happen throughout all of these rooms. There isn't really anything to worry about. The biggest thing in this chapter, of course, is being able to handle the Manicheets. Now, there are some reinforcements. I'll show that off a little bit later. But once you get a little ways into this chapter, some Manicheets are going to be spawning from the back. But the thing is, Manicheets do not have very much movement. So you basically never need to worry about the Manicheets from the back. You do have to worry a little bit just because Roy doesn't have the best movement either, especially if you haven't given him the boots. And he does need to seize each of these thrones individually. But especially if you have people to rescue drop and you have Lalum, I would pretty much never worry about actually fighting the reinforcements from behind. But obviously you're going to have to play that by ear, and if they get close, you may have to fight them. But I wouldn't worry too much about them. Now let's talk about what units you should be deploying. For the most part, what you want is as many divine weapons as you can possibly fit. So there's a divine weapon for every single type, so all the magics, and then all of the like sword, lance, axe, things like that. So in our case, we have Rucker with the Durandal, we have Milady with the Meltet, I'm not really sure, but she has it, and then Gonzalez with the Armads. Then I have 4-Blaze on Lou. Now it's pretty difficult to get anybody to be able to use the S-Rank Light Tome. I don't have anybody to use that. You can get Nime to use the Apocalypse. We actually had a playthrough where Sophia was using the Apocalypse Tome and obliterating Manicheets. It was cool, but that's pretty rare. We also have Shin using Murglaze, something like that. Now the other thing, there's a few other ways to hit Manicheets pretty hard. The divine weapons again are going to be your best friends, but Worm Slayers are also really good. This is one of the things I mentioned with Karel, who's down here. I'm not deploying him because he's kind of just weaker than Alan and Lance, and they have much better movement, but they both have Worm Slayers, which is going to be really helpful here. You can do the same thing with Rucker. Fa also has bonus damage here, and the Divine Stone I think has pretty good might, so she can hit really hard. Although you have to be really careful with that. Obviously you have to bring Fa here, but you don't have to use her in combat. Roy as well can do really good damage with the Binding Blade. It is 18 might, which means that even though his stats will likely be low, he can hit at range and he can hit really hard. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get combat for these Manicheets. The last thing is magic. Magic in general is really good against Manicheets. One of the reasons that you need to be using divine weapons and stuff is because they just have a lot of defense, but they don't have that much magic. So honestly, our Lou, for example, just using fire or L-Fire would still be able to deal decent damage, even though obviously 4-Blaze is going to be able to absolutely obliterate them. But yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know. You can use, again, whoever you want. I would recommend only bringing units that either have divine weapons, Worm Slayers, or magic. But again, it's really up to you as far as who you want to bring. So yeah, I'll probably skip around quite a bit on this chapter. I'll probably skip around until we get to the first set of reinforcements, because again, it's really just killing 3 Manicheets, moving on, killing 3 Manicheets, moving on. I think there might be, I think when you move on, there might actually be 4 Manicheets in these rooms. I don't know. We'll see as we progress. But yeah, this is a very straightforward chapter. So Okay, just a few things I want to mention really quick. Like I said before, I was actually wrong at first when I said that there was just the 3 mana keys. There is one standing usually in the doorways. So you'll have to deal with that. It's not much more to deal with, but yeah, just something to think about. The other thing is rescue dropping here is really important. I mentioned the reinforcements haven't shown up, but I mentioned that they could potentially be annoying just because Roy does never get movement, neither does Fa. But you can pick up both of these units, and I would highly recommend doing that. Like, for example, with Lance here. And then we can do the same thing with Milady, for example. One of the things that you'll notice as you play through this chapter is that we can actually deal okay damage here with Shin. One of the things that you'll notice as you play through this chapter is that you'll have like 1 or 2 units, probably mounted units with good divine weapons or something, doing most of your combat for you. You really don't need like an entire team of units, because there's really going to be no point throughout the chapter where you suddenly need to kill like 4 Manikeets or whatever. So yeah, just know that obviously as always, rescue dropping is extremely useful, and use it quite a bit here. All right, so the first set of reinforcements showed up. Obviously, just man, the button difference is confusing me. It's just 1 Manikeet, of course. Now this is turn. What turn is this? How do you do turns in this game? Turn 5. So it's pretty early, but again, the movement on these Manikeets is going to be very limited, so it's not going to be too hard to stay ahead of this stuff. The other thing that I want to mention really quick is that these Manikeets actually have a decent amount of crit. You can see this guy is 16, for example. This won't matter on like a lot of your units who even have like pretty decent luck, but it usually matters with Milady because a lot of times you'll wind up using her here and her luck isn't that great. I wouldn't worry too much about losing Milady potentially to a crit at this point. Obviously you don't want to, but you know, if you lose a unit here, it's not the end of the world. But I have lost Milady to crits in this chapter in the past, so just be careful with that, I guess. Oh, and also this does a pretty good job of showing, you know, my Lou, I don't know exactly how much magic he has, but even without 4-Blaze, you can still hit really hard just with like simple magic. So even if you don't have some of those divine weapons or whatever, you can still get some really good combat from units like this. And then of course, if you use 4-Blaze, you'll obliterate them, so. Okay, so once you made it this far, the final room that you have to go to does include the boss of the chapter, which is Jan. Like, he is slightly stronger than other Manikeets. Obviously, he has 80 health and all this stuff. But the thing is, he doesn't move, and Manikeets, as you probably know, don't have 2 range in this game or anything. So it's going to be pretty easy to deal with him, to be completely honest. I wouldn't worry about him too much. Obviously, stuff like 4-Blaze or any kind of ranged divine weapons are going to be great. One of the things that I didn't mention is that Manikeets not only spawn from the back here. Well, actually, only 1 spawns from the back there. And then they start to spawn from the throne rooms that you've already been to. This is the reason that even though they have pretty low movement, they can potentially catch up to you. Now, again, I've been rescue dropping a ton with both Fa and Roy, which is one of the reasons that I haven't had to even come close to fighting any of them. If your army is a little bit slower or you're not rescue dropping as much, again, you may have to contend with the Manikeets from behind. But yeah, just know that like, if you have these mounted units and you are rescue dropping, you can deal with it pretty easily. But the thing is, even characters like Rucker and Gonzalez that don't have the best movement are still keeping up with my team. And just using basically max movement every turn has still kept me pretty far ahead of these Manikeets. So wouldn't worry about them too much, but just know, yeah, they will come out of these thrones, but don't like panic or anything. But yeah, we just have to do this final thing and then we'll be done with the chapter. So you can see here that despite Jan looking pretty scary, our Lou can actually one-round him with 4-Blaze. Although to be fair, this is a max magic Lou, but still. So I figured I'd just show this off. You don't get to see the divine weapons all the time, so it's kind of cool to see him. But yeah, just know that despite the fact that he looks pretty scary, I would actually say for sure that Zephiel is like the hardest like final boss of this game for sure. So then we can't quite seize with Roy, but obviously we have Lalum to help us out with that, as she's done this entire time. And then we can move on to the second part of the final chapter. Now we're just gonna go right into talking about this final chapter, and I put that in air quotes, is pretty straightforward. Now I will say this, I've mentioned this a couple times, but in order to get the good ending, I don't know you can skip that fast. We need Roy to defeat the final boss. Now I believe Roy is actually the only character with the Binding Blade that has effective damage. Again, Idun looks pretty scary, but she or he, or I guess she, I don't know, they're really not scary at all. Basically the way this chapter works is there are 2 war dragons here that do have 80 health, so they're pretty strong. And there are going to be reinforcements from the side, but basically we're going to want to do this in 2 turns. So we're going to just move up Roy, and we're going to want to defeat these war dragons. Hope the Gonzalez doesn't get killed. I don't know. Oh, I guess he has that much crit because he's a berserker. Now, as you can see, there is 6 crit here. Again, with these mediocre luck units, there is slightly more crit. So, you know, just be aware of that. But yeah, there are some reinforcements that could potentially come from the side in this chapter. But as long as you kind of insulate Roy in the middle, it's not too difficult to deal with. Whoops. Yeah, this guy's 5 crit against Milady, which is, you know, a bit scary. But again, if Milady dies at this stage in the game, it's really not that important for us. Although I would like that for that not to happen. Again, the final sort of chapters of this game is really not that complicated. I would say the Zephyl chapter and the chapter before that are definitely the, like, more of the pinnacle of, like, late game difficulty in this game. And then, yeah, like I said, we just want to get Roy at least in range to attack the boss next turn. Yeah, which looks like he can already do. Yeah, as you can see, he deals 35 damage. So a really good amount of damage. I actually didn't really need to dance for him. We'll do that next turn. But yeah, just move everybody up. Again, if characters die at this point, it's not that important. Having Lalam's really useful because the hit on Roy obviously is not 100. So if you have any supports, that could be useful. Fa doesn't need to do anything here. She just needs to be alive. So, but yeah, if Fa's died, then you can't get the good ending. But the good ending doesn't really change anything. You still get to do all the chapters, whether or not you've kept Fa alive and wind up killing with Roy. But makes you feel a little bit better because Idun doesn't, like, technically die. But yeah, the biggest important thing here is even if you haven't trained Roy at all, which we basically haven't, it doesn't matter. He can still deal really good damage to the boss. So we're going to want to weaken her, obviously, with somebody else. Yeah, as you can see, Forblaze, despite being extremely strong, number 1 is not effective, and number 2 does not deal that much damage. This is a capped magic Lu. So yeah, not only is Roy... Obviously, you want to kill Idun with Roy because that's the good ending, but it's also honestly going to be one of your best bets. Because nobody else will really be able to deal that much damage, to be completely honest. But again, because my hit with Roy is not 100%, and you really don't know what's going to happen, I would like to get Idun into range where I have 2 attacks with Lalam Dance, just in case. Even though we are technically risking Milady's life here. Oh, also, I know I mentioned this before, and this is probably pretty obvious, but obviously if you lose any divine weapons at this stage, like for example, the Multi is about to break, it doesn't matter. You're good in that. But if this happens, like if the Multi were to break before the Zephyl chapter, you would not be able to do these chapters. So. And yeah, again, this boss does not have 2 range, which of course makes it really easy for Roy to do his thing and not to just die in return, and also makes this boss not terribly scary. All right, let's end the game. Yeah, 83 hit. Not bad. I must have some, like, slight support with somebody because my hit's a little bit better. I don't know if that hit's guaranteed or not. I don't think it is. And we kill Idun. All right, and that was Fire Emblem 6. So like I said, these final chapters, not very difficult unless something really went wrong on the previous chapter, I suppose. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody for watching the entire series. I had a ton of fun making this. We did chapters on both route splits. We've done a chapter or a video on every single chapter of Fire Emblem 6 now. So yeah, I don't know, very cool. So I may, like I said before, I may be moving on to another game. If there's any games that maybe people want to see chapter guides for, Fire Emblem 6 is probably the game I'm the most like expert with. So that's why I decided to start with it, but I know some other games pretty well, especially GBA games. The other thing I might be doing is a video where we just kind of like go over some of the bare bones things people need to know if they don't want to watch like the entire series. But yeah, that's it. That's all of Fire Emblem 6. So hopefully if you watched all the parts, you can now play hard mode for yourself and maybe be more successful. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, again, big thanks to anybody who watched this, enjoy this, all that good stuff. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.